Insurance professionals work hard every day to keep people safe, but as technology transforms the industry, how can insurers protect not only their clients, but also shield themselves from ever-changing cyber risks? My name is Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm the host of the Insuring Cyber Podcast, a monthly look into how the world of cyber and the business of insurance are connected. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Insuring Cyber Podcast. For this episode, I interviewed two great guests about how the use of AI is driving digital transformation in insurance. Our first guest is Michael Streit, president of Ivans at Applied Systems. In this conversation, we discussed the biggest tech challenges still facing commercial insurance, how large language models are changing underwriting and submissions, and what the future of carrier agency connectivity could look like. Check it out. Hi, Michael. It's great to be speaking with you today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Elizabeth?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation and learning about some of the work that you're doing with Ivans. But just to start off, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing now as president of Ivans.
Yeah, so I joined Applied Systems 3.5 years ago. I ran EasyLinks for the first 3 years that I worked here. And last fall, I took over our carrier portfolio, which includes Ivans, which you mentioned, and then Cytora. Cytora is an AI solution that we acquired over the course of last summer. And so I've been working hard on bringing those two product families together, working closely with our agency management systems and driving our carrier business.
That's great. Well, I'm excited that you're here speaking with me today. It's a lot of great work that you do at Applied Systems, and I know that you've had a long career mostly on the carrier innovation side. And now I'm curious from your perspective, what sort of gaps still exist in agency carrier relationships?
Yeah, it's interesting because, if I think about Applied Systems, so let's start there, primarily broker, agency management systems serving brokers. And our most important mission is to make brokers more efficient. When I was running EasyLinks, one of the key metrics we would look at all the time was premium per user of EasyLinks or policy count per user of EasyLinks. We kind of figured if we could make those numbers higher, meaning you're more efficient, everything else would take care of itself. And I'd say by and large, Epic and EasyLinks both have done a really good job driving efficiency for the industry. And I think as a result of that, that's why those are the two leading management systems in the United States for brokers of all sizes. The area where we've totally haven't solved it yet, I would say, or one of the areas as an industry is commercial submissions. So because commercial risk is more bespoke, it's therefore harder to standardize processes. Therefore, a lot of work on a commercial submission process happens outside of the system, and it's been hard to automate. We see solutions that are maybe point to point, like one broker and one carrier establish connectivity, maybe to facilitate a book roll, maybe to always, return a quote on a particular type of business, but they're very point to point, and so they break down when you're trying to scale that, or when the risk comes in and it turns out it needs to go to a different part of the carrier's business, or they're overly standardized. And I think that works pretty well in some parts of the commercial risk. Small commercial, there's commercial comparative raters. We build a couple of them ourselves, and they work really well for certain types of business. But the more complex the risk gets, carriers just do not want to standardize their view of risk to some industry standard. And so, I'd say those are the friction points that exist. And I'm looking forward to talking about how LLMs and Cytora and what we're trying to build is going to solve that.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a helpful overview of what the industry is doing well and where some of the gaps are. And yeah, you mentioned LLMs, some other digital tools. I know that you've spoken about how carriers can use these to quickly identify agencies that fit their appetite. So what are you seeing as some of the most important digital tools for carriers right now? And what should they be looking for in distribution partners?
Yeah, I think, let me talk about kind of what we're working on with Cytora, because I think that capability is one of the most important things a carrier can be doing. So if the problem before the introduction of LLMs was it was really hard to drive efficiency without standardization, forcing carriers to make a trade-off, LLMs remove that. So now you can have your own view of risk. You can be very specific about the risk factors you care about, and still achieve the benefits of automation. That is one way I'd summarize what LLMs have provided to the market. And we see carriers kind of on 4 steps, typically, of a maturation journey. And the fourth one is, I'll segue into what that means from a good trading partner perspective. So the first stage of maturity is, am I just digitizing communications that are coming in? So an email comes in, am I able to digitize that? A form document comes in, maybe it's a form from a different carrier and an agent just fired it off because that's what the current policy was on. Digitizing that creates a ton of efficiency for the carrier. We've seen examples of underwriters spending as much as half of their time rekeying in data. And if you can digitize that and put it into a downstream system, that's an immediate benefit. So that's kind of phase 1 of maturity. And there's a lot of solutions that can do that. And we have examples of clients doing kind of homegrown versions of that first step. The second step is a more, I'll call it, representative digitization capability. So as you know, the process to complete a commercial submission is never as linear as one email comes in, gets digitized, gets moved downstream. It's a very collaborative process. And often brokers are sending information as they get it. And so the second phase of maturity is, as a carrier, can you digitize not only a communication, but I'll say, can you digitize a complete view of risk? And so what that means is, as the first communication comes through, can I digitize that? And then when the loss run comes through a few days later, can I not only digitize that, but recognize it's part of the same risk? In the same way, like a true human underwriting assistant would be collecting information, appending it, packaging it, and then presenting it to an underwriter. More advanced carriers are doing that with their AI solutions. And that's a capability that Cytora has. So that's the second phase of maturity. The third phase is, once I've got a decision-ready risk, meaning a risk that's prepared and ready for a human underwriter to act on it, can I also automate other steps in the underwriting process, such as, can I take that risk, quickly evaluate it against my appetite guidelines, and if it's out of appetite, automatically send an email back to the broker saying, thanks for the submission, not in appetite. Maybe the next step is to assign it to an underwriter. Can I automate that process agentically? And on down the line. I think the way, if I were running a carrier and the way we try to talk to our carriers, I'd be thinking about it is, your underwriters are such valuable resources inside the operations of an insurer. How do I take everything off of their plate that is not evaluating the risk and thinking about the portfolio that I want to construct? So that's the first 3 phases. And then the fourth stage of maturity is actually integrating deeply with the broker. So everything I just described, if you're picturing a flow chart, with the left-hand side is the broker, the right-hand side is the carrier, everything I just described is on the carrier side of that page. But the reality is, this is a back and forth process. We use the term digital round trip to describe what placing a commercial risk looks like, which I think is a good evocative description of it. The leading carriers, the truly leading carriers, are thinking really hard and working closely with us to integrate with the agents themselves, which means, as an agent placing new risk, proactively signaling appetite so that I'm looking at the risk that I want to get a look at, such as sharing my risk schemas so that the agent knows exactly what data is needed to to provide to the broker to complete the risk. And then furthermore, truly leading carriers are working closely with us to not only do that for new business, but to say there's a bunch of renewal policies sitting in the management system, likely not going to get remarketed because there's friction in that process, but the data is all sitting there. And so can we work with Applied to facilitate the digitization of that, route it through Cytora, digitize it, hit the pricing APIs, and return a quote to the broker without anyone touching anything? That's I think what the truly leading carriers are doing, and obviously the brokers that are willing to participate in that workflow and drive some change management on their end to benefit the whole ecosystem are the ones they should be partnering with.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a helpful framework, kind of breaking it down into those 4 different stages of digitization. And you mentioned data at the end. I want to talk about that as well, too, because I know you've spoken about how clean data and automation are important in these conversations. So how can carriers kind of ensure the use of clean data and responsible automation? And how does that help them grow their business and also improve their relationships with distribution partners as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that LLMs actually do in a really powerful way is it in some ways reduces the reliance on perfectly clean data. So in the old world, and when I was running EasyLinks, we used to tell agents, look, your data's got to be really clean because we're going to run a bunch of relatively logic-based automation based on this. And so if the data is garbage, the automation is not going to work. LLMs like really change that. So what LLMs can do is it can take messy data. It is smart enough to say, I don't trust this data field that's coming in because of whatever reason. It contradicts a different submission that came in, or it logically doesn't make sense that this small business is reporting $1 billion of revenue. There must be a typo. And so I think you can trust the LLMs to help make some of those judgment calls. And that reduces, I think, the fear factor of starting to automate tasks. You don't have to clean up your data first before you do this. That said, you should be looking for AI solutions that do the following things. One, you need AI solutions that are capable of enriching data, which Cytora is capable of doing. So it can come in and say, I got a relatively complete submission. I'm going to work with your data providing partners to populate whatever else needs to be populated. Second, they need to do something, include something that we call provenance, which is, why did I make the decision that I made? So I had 3 different names of the business come in. I chose this one because this is the one that is the same as the website that I searched to validate it. That's why I made the recommendation that I made. It's very important to have that chain of thought reasoning to explain why the decisions were made. And then finally, you need an AI solution that will keep the human in the loop. And so what you can do with Cytora, as an example, is you can set confidence thresholds and say, if you're less than, pick a number, 95% confident that this is right, flag a human being to get them involved to make sure that I'm categorizing the data correctly, or running the next agentic step in the process correctly. So that's how I think about it. It's a bit of both sides of the coin. Again, on one hand, it does, I think, democratize the potential for technology because it works really well with fragmented systems. In some ways, that's the magic of it. At the same time, you need to build a process that acknowledges that, submissions are messy. And that's true with human underwriters as well. And so make sure you have the right kind of checks in place to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great perspective. It is both sides of the coin, and we talk about that a lot in this podcast, that you need to have the human in the loop. It's kind of a balance between the use of technology and relying on human underwriters and their knowledge. And so we've spoken about a lot throughout this whole conversation. It's been, really informative, really helpful. So kind of now looking ahead, I'm curious what role you see platforms like Ivans and Cytora and others that you work with playing in helping carriers and agencies scale.
Yeah, when I think about the relationship between brokers and carriers, and it's been really fun for me stepping into this role because now I've worked on both sides of the trade. Both of these parties really need each other to be successful. Obviously, an independent broker couldn't exist if there was no risk capacity behind them. But carriers rely really heavily on independent brokers to distribute into market as well. And so they work really, really closely together, and they're kind of, inherent to each other's existence, for lack of a better word. So the role that I see Ivans playing is there's so much enthusiasm, there's so much urgency. I'm seeing carriers act at a pace I've never seen anybody act before because they recognize the tectonic shift that's happening underneath our feet with all this technology. And there's a lot of ways you could use AI inside your workflow. I think our job is we need to build a platform that not only makes life better for the brokers on their side of the house and the carriers on their side of the house, but the actual collaboration that results in the appropriate placement of risk, that's our sphere. And so anything that has to do with brokers and carriers collaborating, communicating back and forth, making sure the risk has the right home with the right capacity. That's our job. And that's what I think, that's what we exist to do. We've ultimately, Ivans was founded 43 years ago to take friction out of the insurance industry. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. But the place we fell down was the place where technology hadn't met us yet, which was, if it's not standardized, it's really hard to create automation. And now with the advent of LLMs, with really enthusiastic leading carriers jumping on board, I think we're going to see, really rapid adoption and some pretty fun changes that the market's going to experience over time. And when we do that, look, our real mission is more risk gets placed and the coverage gap that, our society has reduces. And that's a pretty noble mission that we're really honored to help drive.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of opportunities ahead. It'll be exciting to see where the industry evolves to in the future. And, thank you so much for taking the time again. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. It was an honor.
I loved speaking with Michael, and to continue the AI conversation, I also spoke with Daniel Herrington, Chief AI Officer at the Zebra. We explored how insurers can move beyond AI hype and successfully embed AI into their workflows, why hybrid human and AI models matter, and with the rapid acceleration of AI adoption, what that could mean for the future of insurance. Here's what he had to say. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Daniel Herrington, Chief AI Officer at the Zebra. Hi, Daniel. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Elizabeth. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I love, we always talk about AI on this podcast. It comes up in every conversation, but I'm excited to dive deep into it with someone who's an engineer in the space. So I guess just to start off, I'm curious, what makes insurance an interesting space to be innovating with AI right now?
Yeah, so I'm brand new to insurance. I've only been working in insurance since starting with the Zebra. So I'm sure it's been a very interesting and evolving place for a long time. But I have been working in AI for a very long time, and seeing those two things come together now gets me extremely excited. It's been such a manual process with so much data for so long that it feels like just the perfect moment for AI to come into this industry and produce massive consumer value. And so that's just really exciting to me.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot going on. And I know insurance has been historically a pretty traditional space. So it's taken a while to catch up. But it seems like insurers are really getting on board with AI now. And there are lots of exciting opportunities in the industry. And I know at the Zebra, you've been using AI to simplify the customer experience in insurance a lot. So can you talk about that and what you're seeing there?
Yeah, I think first off, for those listening that don't know thezebra.com, thezebra.com is a marketplace where customers can come and shop for home and auto, as well as other types of insurance across a large number of carriers and compare prices and ultimately purchase insurance. There's a large agency that supports the Zebra to actually bind policies for customers. So the consumer part and the way AI introduces itself to the customer has lots of different levels. First of all, we think that AI can interact with the customer in some really interesting ways to facilitate the journey in both a personalization and ease of use, as well as helping us internally. So there's the process for an agent, a human advisor, to collect and understand a policy can be difficult as well. And so using AI to bring that information to the licensed advisor so that they can help facilitate the education of the customer is also extremely important to us.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that you've said that scaling AI is less about building better algorithms and more about actually embedding it into workflows, like you just sort of discussed. So can you talk about what that looks like in insurance and what sort of opportunities you're seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're at a point where AI is disruptive. It's a massive change to all industries. It's not an incremental improvement. So you can always make better algorithms and make things move a little faster. But if you fully embed AI into your workflows, that's where you're going to have that massive disruptive impact that produces this net new experiences for your customers. So we build with AI. In our own workflows for developing code, we use all sorts of different platforms for that, all of the major foundation models. But we also use it for our workflows with our advisors. The first one really is around education. We want to make sure that we're educating consumers on the different types of policies they might be looking at, As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm new at insurance, and insurance is hard to understand. I don't think it was ever built intentionally hard, but it's extremely difficult. And so connecting all of these definitions and understanding all of that data allows us to build these educational experiences for our consumers, and building that into the workflow is part of the natural point of it. The next layer, intake of the data. So again, better algorithms. We've had OCR for a while, object character recognition, and it's always gotten better at send me a photo of your driver's license or upload me a picture of your policy. And we've been able to extract text for a long time, but now we're at this layer where we can pull so much context from those docs and make it available for our advisors. So this intake and prep phase in the workflow is also extremely valuable there. And then maybe the third place, just to get a nice rule of threes here, is in the guardrails. Like creating agentic experiences, one of the difficult things for a long time was making it safe. And so putting it into your workflows without knowing that it was going to work in all the corner cases was very difficult to do. So in the same way that we use AI to build these workflows, we use AI to test these workflows. And so we can build these automated guardrails for testing to ensure that it's going to work for all consumers, and can look for those corner cases, so that when we release it in the workflows, we're not having to just constantly fix it or pull it out.
Yeah, that's great. Those guardrails are important. And the education piece of it is so important, as you mentioned, because, for consumers who don't know anything about insurance, you're right, it's a complicated industry. And then the added layer with so much technology now and things evolving so quickly makes it even more complicated. And I know that process presents a lot of exciting opportunity in insurance, but it can also be overwhelming with so many different tech tools out there. And some companies experiment with AI, but sort of struggle to create real value from it. So from your perspective, what separates successful AI products from the pilots that don't scale or sort of make it off the ground?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype in AI. I think it might be my guilty pleasure. I love AI hype. I love to show off all of those cool new features that we're building, and things that maybe don't create immediate value. I think one rule is don't be afraid of the AI hype, but call it what it is. And when we do a presentation with hype, we call it AI theater, and we're very open about that. The struggle, I think, is when you have those hype moments, you go through this trough of disillusionment, where you start on this really high note of we're going to build this amazing thing that's going to create incredible value, and then you find out, wow, this is really hard. And that usually happens like right at the end of the pilot phase. And it's really hard to climb back over that part of disillusionment. We have a fun thing that we do at the Zebra where when we're in that trough of disillusionment and we know it, we post GIFs of Darth Vader, just to acknowledge that it's there and that we know how to get out of it. And then you just focus on the customer metrics. So acknowledging what hype is, acknowledging when you're in that trough of disillusionment, and then focus on the metrics that pull you out of it. That's how you go from, at least that's how we go from experimenting with pilots that may or may not have success to finally finding that fit with consumers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's a great approach. And I love the idea of the Darth Vader GIF, kind of making it fun as well in the process. And I know that you said that you love AI hype, but you've also said that the hybrid approach is what really wins. So can you talk about why you believe the future isn't fully AI native, and what are some of the benefits of maintaining that human touch as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about hybrid interactions with LLMs and UIs right now. That's not what I talk about when I talk about the hybrid. When you just mentioned that the human piece of it is really what I'm talking about. When we talk about a hybrid AI experience, we mean this isn't fully just interacting with an AI. This isn't fully interacting with a human. The real win is when you're able to upscale your humans. So our licensed human advisors are absolutely incredible. If you listen to what they're doing on the phone and the way they're explaining things to customers over chat, it's truly amazing how they're able to fit customers with policies. Conversely, when you look at our AI systems, it's able to pull so much data and get it right to the fingertips of those advisors. The AI alone is useful, but can't provide that recommendation like a human can. And the human is incredible at understanding the policies and providing that feedback to the customer, but it needs access to all that data. When you put those two things together, you get this magical experience. And so that's why I believe the hybrid approach of AI plus licensed human advisor is a wonderful feature of our industry. I think you mentioned at the top of this that insurance had sometimes been thought of as a slow moving area. I think that's a really good thing. Having the human in the loop as part of our regulatory is a wonderful feature that we get to lean on as we design these experiences.
Yeah, and that's a great perspective as well, because you do hear a lot of, complaining about the industry that it's been slow moving or traditional. But I think you're right that having that sort of cautious approach can serve you in the long run, because you're really careful about what you implement and making sure that it's successful. And thinking things through. So I think that's a great perspective as well. And, we've talked about a lot so far in this conversation, but I'm curious, kind of looking ahead, what do you think will change the most about how insurers are using AI in the next few years?
Yeah, I think the speed at which we adopt is about to take off. So in the next few years, we've seen, in the past few years, we've seen several industries adopt AI at scale. And just about all of these cases, it happened extremely quickly. And so I'm expecting the big change in AI affecting insurance to happen extremely fast. And what I believe we're going to see is massive consumer value. Their ability to search many, many policies and understand lots of different options, and then really have those packaged for them with a licensed advisor. It's going to happen really fast. And I expect it to be near term.
Yeah, lots of exciting things ahead in insurance. And thanks for taking the time to speak with me and talk about the work that you're doing at the Zebra. And I've really learned a lot from our conversation. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks to Michael and Daniel for taking the time to speak with me, and thanks to all of you who tuned in. You can watch or listen to all of the latest Insuring Cyber Podcast episodes at our website on insurancejournal.tv or wherever you get your podcasts. And feel free to reach out to me with any comments or questions at eblosfield@wellsmedia.com. Talk to you next time.